Hello and welcome to my HTML5 web design tutorial. In this tutorial, we are going to go over the CSS portion of page layout and organization. This is the box model, and every single element on the page is considered to be a rectangular box. So everything in the content portion would be things like image tags, header tags, paragraph tags, and things like that. So that's the content of the website. The padding is the space between the content and the border. And we went over border in the last CSS video. Border can be, you could have no border, you could have a solid line, you could have a dashed line. So there's many options with border. And then the portion between the border and the edge of the screen is called the margin. And all browsers have a default margin, but you could override that in your CSS style sheets. And also the padding default setting is 0 pixels for all the browsers. And you can also override that as well. So you get a complete control over where everything is placed. So let's see the box model in action. So as you can see right here at that top example, we are in a Firefox browser with a sample HTML document. And the white portion of the screen is the margin. At the top there, the examples of the box model, that is an H1 heading tag, which is our content, and the space between that and the border is our padding. The border is a solid black line, and in the bottom there, it's a solid thicker black line, and the content is a big paragraph tag, and the border is the white space around the margin is the white space around the border. So this is a great example of what the box model looks like on an actual web page. Okay, now I'm going to introduce something called normal flow. So browsers render your web page code line by line in the order it appears in the HTML document file. This processing is called normal flow. So as you can see, I have a simple HTML file right now. I have my head right here. I have my doc type, my HTML tags, my body, and I have 2 div tags. I have the first one here with a class called div1 and the second one with a class called div2. And as you notice, they're separate from each other. Open, close, open, close. This is the first box. This is the second box. That is the content part of them. And if we look at the CSS, the first div class has a width and height of 200, so it's a square, and a background color of this, and it has a border that's 3 pixels thick, dashed with this color, and a padding of 5 pixels. So that's the space between the content and the border, right? So the second square is going to be 100 by 100 with a background color of this, the border, and it has a margin of 10 pixels and a padding of 5. So 2 separate divs. Let's go ahead and preview it. And that's what it looks like. This is the first box. This is the second box. This is normal flow. Because if you look at our HTML document, the browser renders this by looking at the first div, displays it, then looks at the second one and displays it. But what happens if this div is inside of this one? That would be called nesting div elements. So that's what I did in this example. In this one, you see the div opens, but it doesn't close before this one starts. And then this one closes, but it closes for this one, the closest one, and then this one closes the first div. So this is the closing and opening for the first div. This is the opening and closing for the second div. So this one is opened and closed within the first one. So let's see how this works. Same exact CSS, same exact, you see? I'm linking to it in this one, and then in this one we're also linking to the same one, pagelayouts.css. So let's go ahead and preview this one. And as you can see, the inner box is displayed inside the outer box because we nested that in the outer box. So that is the power of nesting div elements, and it's a good example of what normal flow is. It's how the browsers render a web document. Okay, so you've seen how normal flow causes the browser to render the elements in the order that they appear in the HTML source code. When using CSS for page layout, there are situations where you might want more control over the position of an element. So now I'm going to introduce two things called positioning. The first one is relative positioning, and the second one is absolute positioning. So relative positioning is going to be this example right here. So if you see, I have an ID called my content position relative. Okay, there's the font. It's going to be 30 pixels moved over from the screen, 30 pixels between the screen on the left, and then I have some styling for the H1 tags. So if we go over here and look at what I have a body. Here's my H1, and here's my ID, and it's going to be used on this paragraph right here. So let's go ahead and preview it. I'm going to do Opera. Okay, great. So this is relative positioning. Relative positioning changes the location of an element slightly relative to where it would otherwise appear with normal flow. And the best way to figure out the difference between the two is to see examples. So now we're going to go and do absolute positioning. So we're going to go over here, and absolute positioning is to specify the precise location of an element outside of the normal flow in its container element. So we're going to go ahead and show you an example. So we're going to go back to sample.css. Position is going to be a absolute, and we're going to go left 200 pixels and top 100 pixels. Okay, and then I'm going to do a width of 300 pixels. Okay, we're going to save that, and we're going to change this to absolute positioning, and we're going to save this. Save and preview. Opera, remember. Okay, so absolute positioning, as you could see, this paragraph was placed exactly where we wanted it to be with our CSS. So here is relative. This one is placed relative, to the element closest to it, 30 pixels from the left side. This one is placed exactly where we wanted it to. It is 300 pixels wide and 200 pixels from the left side and 100 pixels down from the top here. I do want to say that the best way to learn the difference between relative and absolute positioning is to Google it and look at samples of websites that use that in their code. And also, when we do examples, we're going to be using this quite a bit. So it helps a lot to see examples. So if you don't quite get it yet, that's fine. It's no big deal. Okay, so next we're going to go over something called CSS float. Elements that seem to float on the right or left side of either browser window or another element are often configured using the float property. The browser renders these elements using normal flow and then shifts them to either the right or left as far as possible within their container. So we're going to use float right to float the element to the right side of the container, or float left to float the element on the left side of the container. Okay, so I have an example here, and as you can see, I have an H1 heading right here. It says Wildflowers, an image, and some sample text. If we look at my CSS, the H1 has a little bit of styling, not too important for our, so does the paragraph, just the font. But if you notice, I have an ID called flower, and it's right here in my image tag. So it says float right, and then margin. And if you notice, I have 0 space, 5 pixels, space, 5 pixels. And I've never showed this in any of my videos, and you're probably wondering, why are you using this? What does this mean? And this is a great time to show you guys that if you just Google margin property, or you could Google any type of CSS element or HTML tag or anything, and it will come up on Google. And then W3 Schools, they literally go over everything, and they show you the usage for every property, every tag, every element, everything you could think of. So as a web developer, you're going to have to Google things all the time because it's hard to remember everything. So if you look at the definition, it shows you all the ways you could write the margin property. So if you notice, if you do it the way I did with 4 characters, then the top would be 10, the right is 5, then the bottom is 15, and then the left is 20. So that's how the browser reads this. If you only use 3, then the bottom and left would be the middle one. This would be the top, and this would be the bottom. If you did 2, the top and bottom would be 10, and then the right and left would be 5. And if you did 1, they would all 4 be 10 pixels. So that's something important to remember. Don't be afraid to Google things. You're going to have to do it all the time. So I have my margin there, and then I have a border of 1 pixel solid, black. Okay, so we're going to save this and preview it. Great. So as you can see, this is float right. So this image is floated to the right. So let's try float left and see how different that looks. Save and preview. You see now all I did is change the CSS, and now the image is on the left. And as you can see, it has the no margin right here, right? Because we did not change our margin for that. So why don't we do 5 pixels? 5 pixels for everything. And preview this. You see that? Okay, well, great. So yeah, that is the float property. Another thing I wanted to mention was the clear property. And the clear property is often used to terminate or clear a float. It means the same thing. So you can set the value of the clear property to left, right, or both depending on the type of float you need to clear. So a common practice for this would be to have a line break with a class called like clear left or clear right, or you can clear both. So it's really up to you. And this is another one of those things where it's better to see an example. So we're going to show this in an example. But just so you know, let's say there was a massive div tag and everything was floated to the right, or all the images were floated to the right, and you wanted one not to be. You would just, clear right, or you could do clear both. It doesn't really matter. So a clear option is offered so you have more control over your styling. Okay, so we're going to do a simple 2-column layout example at this point now. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we have our head. We're going to do a 2-column example, and we're going to go to our body. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of all of this stuff, and I'm going to clear my CSS sheet. Okay, so we're starting from scratch. All right, awesome. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have an ID called wrapper. And I'm going to have another ID called left column. Then I'll have another one after that called right column. And within that right column, I'm going to have a header, I'm going to have content, div ID equals content. And then I'm going to have another one called footer. Okay, so we got the footer. Now we're going to save this real quick. Control save, command save. Okay, now we're going to configure our CSS. So this is an ID, so we're using a pound symbol. So width 80% margin left, auto, margin, whoops, right. And I told you already, auto is a way for the browser to automatically distribute the margin space automatically. So background, color, let's go with B3C7E6. Sounds good. Alrighty, and we're gonna go left column, ID, float, left, width, 150px, and let's go ahead and color this just so we could see what it looks like. So I'm just gonna color it yellow just for now. And right column, margin left, 155 pixels, and background color 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. Okay, so we're going to add some dummy content in here. So this left column is going to be our navigation. So this example we're doing is a 2-column page layout. So the left column is the navigation. The right column is the header, content, and footer area. So we're going to go ahead and in the left column add our navigation. So UL, then LI. Whoops. We're doing an unordered list. I'm gonna go ahead and put, and a cool trick here is you could put a pound symbol right there if you don't have anything to link to. You're just doing something for practice. So let's go home. Okay, this will serve for our purpose. Command copy. Okay, paste. We'll have 4 links. Great. So let's say one is home, one is menu, about, and contact. So go ahead and save this and see what it looks like so far. Great. So you can see on the left here, this is our menu, and we're gonna get some dummy content in here. So I'm gonna do let's do H1 hello world, and then we're gonna have a little paragraph underneath that. This is sample content, and a good way to get sample content quickly, copy and paste. Okay, save, and we're gonna go ahead and copy this whole thing and do it a few times. Great. So that's what a bunch of content on a page would look like. So we're going to save that and go ahead and check it out. Awesome. So as you guys can see, I can mess around with padding and margins and everything like that. But this left side here is going to be the menu. And then this is going to be the content. And then the footer, obviously you could change the CSS there as well. Let's take off this yellow. I think I messed myself up with the yellow. Command, because the background color is going to do its job. There we go. So you could see the background color does a good job. So I have all my navigation right here, and if we wanted to, we could add a big header image on top of all this. So most websites now, they have a navigation at the top. If we were to go to W3 schools or something like that, if we were to go to W3 schools or something like that, they have the navigation at the top. But some of the older websites and still websites now have navigation on the left as well. And maybe if you have a large educational website, you will have a navigation on the left and at the top. Maybe the left navigation will be a further in-depth navigation for that particular part of your website. But yeah, if we look at this example, what are some things that we could work on that are completely obvious. Obviously, this is too close, so the content could use some padding, that's for sure. This could use some styling. That's kind of just really blunt, just it's really plain text. It's small. We could actually replace these with buttons that say home, menu, about, and contact, or we could just use text, make it bigger, and change the way that it looks. You can make it stand out more with colors and borders and background colors and everything like that. So and then the footer obviously should be smaller text. So I mean, just I could just see something that could help. Right off the bat would be style equals padding. Whoops. Let's go 5 pixels. Command save. And if we look at that right off the bat, you see how we get that off of there a little bit. We could even go 10 pixels. Let's go 10 pixels. Whoops. Command save. And yeah, so that looks even better. So that's something that already makes the site look a lot better. And it, you can notice that we don't have any header image at the top there. It always helps to have your logo or a big banner at the top. And if we look at what we have here, we do have a header. We just don't have anything in it. So I could go ahead and get a sample header image and come right back. Okay, so I got a little header image saved for us, and I got it in my folder. It's right here. So I went ahead and put this in the header container right here, and I saved it. And if we check it out, there we go. Obviously, I would get some kind of custom artwork from a graphic designer or Fiverr.com or something like that, and I would put that up here. This is not the right size, so that's why it only goes this far. But it's good, it's better than nothing, as you can see. And then if we had a footer down here, we would make it, small text, italic. We would have our copyright down here. And we could mess with the navigation and make that look better. But yeah, as you can see, we have content, we have our padding right here, we have our margins, and everything goes nicely together here. And one more thing I wanted to show you guys before we leave. Let's say you don't want your navigation to be vertical like this. Let's say you want a horizontal one. So we're going to go ahead and learn that really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this left column up here. Let's just go ahead and get rid of everything for this example. So I'm going to get rid of everything. I'm actually going to name this nav. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of all of this. And this div goes with the wrapper. Okay, great. So I have one ID called nav. So I'm going to go ahead and style it right here. Oops. Nav. Great. And so we're going to be addressing the unordered list. So the ID nav is needed. So we're going to do nav ul to style the unordered list within the ID nav. So all the unordered lists that use nav will have the styling. So list, style, type, none. I'm going to explain these all when I get done typing them. So then nav li, which is all of the list elements in the nav IDs, display inline. So to display something inline, it means instead of just rendering it the way it is and displaying it 1, 2, 3 in a vertical list, it would display everything in the same line in a row, like a navigation, like a horizontal navigation, right? So and then we need to address the nav A, which are the links, and text none, padding right 10 pixels. So, it goes from left to right. So there should be a space to the right after each one. So let's go ahead and save this. First of all, let me tell you about all of these. So the element will not display none. So the list style type configures the style of the list marker. So we don't want anything there. We don't want a circle or a square or anything. If you recall, there was bullet points. We don't want anything like that for our navigation. So that's why we have list style type none, display inline, so that it displays in one line, and then for the links, the text decoration, we don't want any kind of underline or anything like that for our navigation. So if we go back, you see how these are all underlined? We don't want that either. So that's what that deals with. And if you want further in knowledge of each one of these, you could just Google them. Just Google text decoration, and then padding right is used to the right of every link is going to be some space because they're going to be all on the same line. So we're going to save this and view it. And yeah, so that looks great. As you can see, we have a home, menu, about, contact, all in the same line, and they all have nice space between them. Obviously, in a real live website scenario, we'd play around with this for a while, and we could actually use images or keep this text, and we could really make it look nice and pretty. But for this example, this is good for educational purposes.
Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for future video notifications. Feel free to donate by clicking the PayPal donation link below in the description. Visit our website at freecomputerhelp.net for programming tips, installation guides, and more.